Okay, now we're on it. Here's the date.
Yeah, you turned around.
Time share before ever. Sure it was. Okay, are we good to go? Yeah, we're good. Yeah. She's probably just thinking things on her and she'll sneak in. Okay. All right. We will call this meeting to order, and Deacon Robert, will you lead us in prayer?
Absolutely. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
Reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew.
Glory to you.
Jesus said to the chief priests and the elders of the people, "What is your opinion? A man had 2 sons. He came to the first and said, 'Son, go out and work in the vineyard today.' The son said in reply, 'I will not.' But afterwards he changed his mind and went. The man came to the other son and gave the same order. He said in reply, 'Yes, sir,' but did not go. Which of the 2 did his father's will?" They answered, "The first." Jesus said to them, "Amen, I say to you, tax collectors and prostitutes are entering the kingdom of God before you. When John came to you in the way of righteousness, you did not believe him, but tax collectors and prostitutes did. Yet even when you saw that, you did not later change your minds and believe him." The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Father, here we are before you, ready to open our hearts to you. We believe that you are our God, our Creator. We are confident that you are leading us home to you day by day. You wish to draw us closer to you because you have given us your only Son as our Redeemer. We love you and wish to cooperate with your loving designs for our salvation and the salvation of countless souls. Here we are, Lord, to do your will. Lord, help us to cooperate generously in your work of salvation.
Saying yes, but no. It seems that the longer we've been following Jesus, the more we are like the second son in the parable. We've said yes to God. Our intention is to follow him, but in the end, we don't seem to follow him very well. We come up short. Then we renew our resolutions to follow him more closely, and before long, we catch ourselves once again using our time on ourselves and doing very little for him. What's wrong? We don't truly want to be like the second son who said yes, only with his lips. In what aspect of my life am I saying yes, but no?
Doing the bare minimum isn't at least part of the problem that Jesus doesn't come first in our lives. Since we live in a world where many follow him lukewarmly, if at all, it's easy to think we're doing wonderful, even exceptional jobs with the way we practice our faith. It's easy to think this way even when we're doing little more than bare minimum, or perhaps living with a fatal flaw in some basic virtue like charity or purity. What if we were to evaluate our Christianity the way we would be evaluating for a job? Would we keep that job if we never worried about doing more than the bare minimum, or if we lacked one of the basic skills needed for it? Why do I think I can get away with shoddy work when it comes to Jesus? Do I forget that God the Father invites me to work in his vineyard, the church, not as a servant, but as a son or daughter?
I am crucial for the salvation of souls. Following Jesus is the single most important thing I have to do in my life. It is more important than any job I could ever have. He has given me a mission in my life, similar to his own mission. Our Lord wishes me to earn graces, not only for myself, but for many souls out there whom I may never even know. These graces could be crucial for the salvation of many souls. Certainly, if I am married, my spouse and children would be the first ones to benefit from the graces I gained through my prayers, good works, and sacrifices. But in addition, I have no way of knowing how many others will depend on my holiness. I need to be ready at any time to bear witness to Jesus and to be a faithful instrument of his grace for whomever he places in my life.
Conversation with Christ. Dear Jesus, we are preparing ourselves to celebrate the beginning of your mission of salvation. Help us to understand the importance of the part of your mission you have entrusted to each one of us, so that we can live it well as you hope we will. Help us to be more faithful to the daily living of our Christian life and to give witness to you in all situations. Help us to guide others to you with real Christian charity, not pride, so they will not be repelled by our behavior, but drawn to you. Help us to be the light to our families that you want us to always be.
Together,
My
My
Lord,
Lord Jesus,
may
may our feet journey together, may our hands gather in unity, may our hearts beat in unison, may our souls be in harmony, may our thoughts be as one, may our ears listen to the silence together, may our glances profoundly penetrate each other, and may our lips pray together to gain mercy from the eternal Father. Amen.
the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Right one here. Okay, the land acknowledgement.
Before we begin, the Medicine Hat Catholic Board of Education would like to acknowledge that we are gathering on the traditional land of the Blackfoot people who have welcomed here for centuries the Cree, the Métis, other First Nations, and non-Indigenous people. The land is now recognized as the traditional territory of Treaty 7 to the north, west, and south, and Treaty 4 to the east. The Medicine Hat Catholic Board of Education also wishes to thank the First Nations people, past and present, for welcoming us here.
Thank you. Okay, presentations, we don't have any. I just want to share something. When I was reading that part, my part in the prayer, I was reminded of one time I was it was a New Year's Eve, and I was at a pub where I didn't want to be with my daughter's ex-husband singing because he thought he was a rock star, but he was really a drug addict. So let's just leave it at that. And this kid came up to me, very nice dressed, very well kept guy, young guy, and he came up and he said, "Mr. Glasgow, I'd just like to thank you for saving my life." I didn't even remember this kid and I didn't recognize him, but he was somebody I taught who was in one of my religion classes at McCoy. And he said, one day we were there and we were having this discussion, and I don't know if it was something I said or something the other kid said or whatever, but he said, I was going to take my life that day and I didn't. This makes me, but we never know when we're there. We never know when we're present to that one person. And I didn't even remember that guy. Didn't recognize him. Anyway, let's get on with the meeting. Approval of the minutes. Public board meeting November 8th. Somebody want to approve those? Robert? All in favor? Okay, and public board meeting November 15th. Have somebody approve those? David? All in favor? Thank you. And the public board meeting on November 29th. Bernie? Thank you. All in favor? All right, approval of the agenda. Was there any things we needed to add or take out or? Okay, if somebody could approve that. Robert? All in favor? Thank you. Board communications, nothing there. Catholic education, and Heather isn't here. Her father-in-law passed away. So we'll keep her and him in our prayers. School Parish Relations Committee, Robert.
Nothing to report other than our next meeting will be February 15th. And Heather's father-in-law's name is Dale.
Pardon me?
Heather's father-in-law's name is Dale.
Dale.
If you would like to keep him and his family in your prayers.
Was it sudden or?
It was, yeah, it kind of got a little sudden last week. I think she was up there in Saskatoon this weekend, and then things took a bit of a turn. So Brad is up there, which is good. Yeah, it was a little.
She has 2 reports here. The chaplaincy update. I read through it. It seems to be going really well. So I think people are quite happy with BJ and what he's trying to do. And the second one is the Student Faith Leadership Program. And that is where she is asking for money, if I'm correct, right? But that money's there, right? That money is there for Heather?
Yes,
Yeah.
well, that'll be coming from the funds set aside from the international
Right,
education funds.
right, yeah.
We'll just transfer and use those funds.
Perfect.
to funds.
Good. And I've heard really positive things about that student faith leadership stuff too, so that's great. A couple of really good things happening there, which speaks well for our Catholicity part of our strategic planning, so that's great. Board work plan, infrastructure maintenance and renewal plan. Mr. McPherson.
Thank you. The 22-23 IMR plan will be presented for approval at the January 23 public board meeting. We're just putting the final details together on that. We'll be ready for January.
Perfect. And school sorry.
I apologize, Madam Chair, if I could just go back with a comment related to, I think, Catholicity.
Okay.
And I shared this with Mr. Bosch the other night at a Prince and McCoy meeting. When we had match day, my wife and I and Mrs. Melly and Mrs. Gordon and Mrs. Snortland, we spent, most of us, close to 12 hours sitting in the McCoy lobby. And I said to Mr. Bosch that his student body was extremely impressive. That when we got there before 7 o'clock, and when the kids came in, they were holding the door for each other. They were helping us with stuff, if they saw we needed stuff being carried and so on. Very polite when they came up. Some of them didn't know what we were doing. And literally, all day long, we never heard one negative comment, one negative word, any kind of behavior, anything like that. And so I just want to say that I think that's the testament, 1, to our kids, 2, to their families, and 3, to also the work that all our teachers do, preschool to 12, and that we have excellent environments, not perfect, but we have excellent environments in our schools. So I just wanted to put that in there. Thank you.
And just to add on to that, all of the schools that we've been able to do business with so far, that is apparent there as well, in every school. Okay, go ahead.
Further to that, I think I mentioned this perhaps before. My wife is retired from Alberta Health Services, and she goes back to help them when they ask her. And she's been involved in school visits through the public and separate system, even out into the outlying Hutterite colonies, to bring kids up to date on their immunization. And my wife has commented at dinner a couple of times that there's such a marked difference between the behavior and the decorum in the Catholic schools than to the public schools. She said it's a night and day difference. The Catholic kids in our system are quiet, respectful, eager to please, and quiet, not so much with the public system.
That's great. We got great kids. All right, 10, information items, strategic priorities, Dr. Zwicky. Did I miss something?
That's my fault for interjecting. I apologize.
Well, there you go, Mr. Moody.
I threw you off.
Messed me up.
You were humming.
I was, yeah. School education plans, Dr. Zwicky.
So if you click on the link to that agenda item, you'll see that you're taken to the website, and the school plans that have been submitted up to the date have been posted on our website there for the public to view. We are, I think, one of only 1 or 2 school divisions that actually submitted our plan, jurisdictional plan to Alberta Education. And everyone else is waiting until January for theirs, but we've had ours. Largely due to Chelsea's efforts, so she deserves the kudos on that one. But the school plans are all there, and we are nearly done our school visits and reviewing school plans with principals in their buildings as well.
I haven't got through all of these yet, but the ones I have are really good. They do an excellent job of these school plans. And I think these videos and stuff that they're putting together now, are they sharing them on their websites, their own websites? And what a good idea. That has really been a blessing, I think, for parents to be able to go in and see these. So congratulations to the schools for getting this done. Okay, now we'll go on to strategic priorities update.
So the update to our strategic priorities is attached, and the December updates are all there, and I'm prepared to answer any questions that trustees may have on it.
I like these. I like to be able to go through them. Mr. Leahy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the superintendent for this report. My question isn't directly related to the report. I noted where you have a meeting later this week with the deputy minister.
It was canceled.
It was canceled, okay. Was that just specific to our school board, or is he having these phone conversations or these meetings with all the school boards?
My understanding is that it's a province-wide meeting that deputy ministers visiting each board, and it's a face-to-face meeting. So I think that's what, just right now with everything else going on.
And then just to repeat something I've said in other, you would ask for inputs on, I don't know if it'll get rescheduled, but I think our board has expressed a willingness to work with the government in any kind of initiative or program. We're interested in being innovative and creative and working with the government. So that would be my only message to him. So thank you.
Any other comments there? I like this. I like the way you have this set up. I like to go, I can just go look at December.
Well, again, I'd like to take the credit for it, but Chelsea is the one that designed that.
Well, you just keep listening to her. But it's good. It's very good.
So
Yeah, go ahead.
if I may to Mr. Helmer,
Okay.
how did you find your recruiting trips? Have both of those been done now? And I'm especially interested to hear, Mr. Helmer, what you're seeing at St. Mary's. I understand they've started they not only do they have an elementary program now, but a secondary program too.
So St. Mary's was on the 2nd of December, so I drove up there and set up. 130 students attended, and mandatory for them to attend. There was about I'm guessing now, but about 10 divisions from Northern Alberta, Northern BC, of course, Calgary in the south. Each division was given about 2 minutes to introduce themselves. And so it was good. We all, I mean, the kids know where Medicine Hat is, and we're 3 hours, east. I did find, however, that Calgary Public, in their 2 minutes, advertises that we're going to need 400 teachers next year. And then right after them, Calgary Catholic advertises that they're going to need 250. So that was a little difficult. And then I went, when they said, okay, students, you can go and check out the different divisions. So I'd go out and grab them and bring them in, because I was going to be very aggressive. I want these Catholic kids. And I asked them, so are you interested in moving outside of Calgary? And a lot of them weren't. However, that being said, I did get a lot there. Okay, Medicine Hat, tell me about Medicine Hat. And I was able to, we had a really good display. We had we bring our own TV, 43-inch color TV, and we stream some video of our schools and our kids and our programs. And our academies were very popular with the kids. Our Fine Arts Academy and our Athletic Academy at Notre Dame. They loved the idea of our elementary academies, both St. Mike's and at St. Francis. So there was definitely some interest. That being said, I haven't received any applications yet. However, I haven't put out. We have a couple of maternities coming in the new year, so I'm looking forward to seeing if I can get some. Dwayne and I went to University of Lethbridge, so 240 kids graduate each year, and I thought it was very good, because we had some of our local kids came right up to us and say, I want to get back to Medicine Hat. A lot of kids, again, very interested, and I noticed very much a difference between the willingness for kids out of University of Lethbridge to explore versus, I just want to stay in Calgary. So we had a lot of students, Dwayne and I, and we talked to a great number. I've got a number of students that I took their names and their phone numbers, and one of my students, I told them that we're going to be advertising some maternities here soon, and an idea of what I'm looking at for next year. Very interested, so that was good.
I know there's two, I'll send you the names. There's 2 kids who graduated from Medicine Hat Catholic who are going to St. Mary's next year.
Good.
And will be done in 2 years.
Chair, if I can ask Mr. Hellman. So when they asked how many jobs could there possibly be open for next fall?
I tell them this year I believe it's 18 probationaries. Some of those are first year probationaries, some of those are second, and I have about, right now, probably about 8 temps. So we have positions. Last year was a big year for us, but I would expect 15 would be my guess if I was going to guess for next year.
Would that be because some students or teachers decide they're on a first year contract that they're going to go elsewhere?
Some might do
And some are
that.
retirements?
Some are temporary contracts. So when we have a maternity, so let's say we have a maternity that starts in February. That maternity is advertised from February to June 30th. Then we open up it again from September through to the next year, right? So there's a good chance that if that teacher is knocking out of the park, they get that position back again, but it's still a temporary and then another temporary. So that's part of that number too.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Good. Thanks, Jeff. All right, international education update.
So the International Ed report is attached. This report was prepared by Josh. And as you can tell by the report, Josh is very much a detail-oriented type of person. So it's a fairly thorough report there in terms of numbers and so on. And so very encouraging. The actual number of students that we have in the division, I think, is up a little bit. 1 or 2 students since he prepared the report for me last week. They had a late arrival or 2 that employer agreed to accept, that they figured that they could work them into the timetable. He's identified some of the challenges there and just what they're working out, and very exciting news at the bottom of the first page is that they already have 11 students registered for the fall. So for this time of year to have students registered for next year is very exciting. And so they don't anticipate any difficulty in having our program full and registrations closed before the summer holidays, which would be great for McCoy as well. Makes timetable a lot easier. You know, how many students we're dealing with.
On the challenges where it says timetabling was highly affected by the influx, have they got that worked out? Kind of like that would be.
They did, much to the credit of the staff at McCoy this year. One of the difficulties is that because of COVID, everyone had a pause on registering their students because they didn't know if they would be able to. And then at the end of May, June, and going into July, all of a sudden, every school division was just awash in applications. And so they didn't want to say no. However, when you accept a number of students that late in the year, the timetable is already set. And so to Paul's credit and to the folks there, they pulled their timetable apart and made it work. But you know, we don't want to have that situation every year. So this year, the intent is to have registrations closed prior to the timetable being finalized. And then, you know, if there are a handful that trickle in after, they'll need to be just fit into the timetable as opposed to redesigning the whole timetable in its entirety.
So how many kids would be, like how many foreign students would be in a class? Is there a cap on that or?
Well, it depends on the class. If it's a diploma class, yeah, they're not filing students into. If it's like a cooking class.
Yeah,
you
then
can
it could be
a
all.
number of them
yeah.
because the option classes, and it's depending on the type of student. So if it's a student here who wants to graduate, they're more focused on the diplomas and the route that's needed. If they're just here for a year and just for enrichment, then they get more of the option courses and those types of things. And we tend to not have them go into the diploma courses or the higher end courses because it, you know, it's a lot of work for those teachers as it is. And so if the kids aren't there for the diploma, then they don't need to be in that class.
Right. Well, that's good. David?
In relation to challenge number 3, and I realize that in comparison to the total number of students that we are serving and have served, this is a small number. My question though is, do we do any kind of reference checks? Do we ask the schools of these students, the current schools, to provide us with a letter, you know, about character, those kinds of things?
Yeah, they do that background. This one of the students here had they were accepted into the program and not academically strong. However, they said they're there for enrichment, but that translated into not showing up in class here. And so, you know, there was 2 students that had very significant dietary requests that were met because the program charges a premium for homestay families to, you know, if you're a pescatarian or these types of things. But they were, it wasn't working. They were still being very fussy with that. And so, you know, it's not going to work. So we've had that discussion already, and I know Chuck's been talking to Joshua about that in terms of vetting students. There's some of those things now in the next round. You know, we've been there. We don't want to go down that road again.
Thank you.
Ernie, did you hand it?
Yes, I did, Chair. Dr. Zorinsky, I was just going to ask, I noticed its first line says our current school year has exceeded the anticipated 63 FTE students. What is our cap, or do we have one?
So with respect to McCoy, one of the things that we're going to have a discussion in January with them about is what's the number that works in the building. So this year, you know, they're running at this, they've got it. I think once the timetable issue was sorted out, they talked a lot better about it. And the other issue for McCoy is the vetting process, just to make sure that the students are coming. It has to have a minimum academic ability and English level and so on. So I think with part of that discussion then is that if they're setting the threshold at that level, what's their number? And so we very much want to work with McCoy in determining that, not just saying, well, your number is 75. Because if 75 is going to put too much stress on that building, then it's not a good thing for us or the students coming in. And so McCoy's going to give us that number. And I know Notre Dame is excited to have students, but not at the expense of our own. So what I mean by that is we won't accept international students into Notre Dame and decline local kids. So Notre Dame will be, if they have room in an academy in particular, then they would take students. But if it's full or if it looks like it's going to be full, then they're not going to accept students into that program. St. Mary's is a little more flexible if the students are interested in finance. They've got a little more capacity there. So,
But they are getting some, right, Notre Dame?
they have a couple,
Because didn't,
one or two. Yeah. So once we have those discussions in January, then we'll have an idea of what the target number is for the program.
But we don't specifically have a hard cap number of 75.
Well, this year we're done. Like, we're not accepting anybody else.
Right, but in the future, as we proceed, I know schools enrollments will fluctuate. And yes, we could accommodate more, but there's also a certain amount of work that goes along with accepting and trying to incorporate these students within our classrooms. So have we considered, or has there been a discussion at some point in the past prior to my joining the board that says maybe we'd look at a cap?
Yeah, well, I think initially the discussion was 75 students, all in full time. But, you know, that number may or may not work for them because their number could be 50.
Okay, thank you.
and if that number was 75, is that 75 in the program, including junior high and senior high? Or is that 75 overall?
Well, initially that was just the number. All
across,
yeah.
yeah.
But I think as we work through this year and have those discussions, then the schools will give us a better idea. of
And,
what
you
their
know, like
number
you
is.
said, it depends on the students, it depends on the class, it depends on,
Yeah.
it's hard to come up with a number.
Well, and the vetting process probably wasn't as stringent in the first round because you wanted to have a program.
Right.
You know, and there was a flush, there was an onslaught for them. But now, you know, especially when we have registrations coming in this early, it's very easy for the schools. You know, I know the staff at McCoy are looking at transcripts of students and getting a bit more of that academic information ahead of time. And so if they're not meeting the threshold that they want, then we're not going to accept them into the program.
That TV there, I just noticed, like, I was thinking, who's that old lady sitting there?
I'm not going to
I don't
comment.
like that TV.
It's not a very good picture.
Oh, my word. All right, establishment of a separate school district, Mr. McPherson.
Thank you. So we briefed the trustees before about the establishment, or what's commonly known as a 4x4. So just an update in terms of where we're at. We have met with the elector, and we have settled on, in conjunction with Prairie Rose, to have both Bowell School District 1912 as well as Suffield 2757. And those districts are outlined within the attachment. We have found one of our parents who resides in the Suffield School District who has graciously taken on the responsibility for leading that charge in conjunction with the other elector. So what this means now is those two school districts need to conduct a census to determine what the minority faith is. In the event that the Catholics are in the minority faith in those two school districts, there would need to be a community information meeting, and then there would be a vote on establishing the school district. That vote needs to be completed and the results turned into the minister by April 30th of 2023. So there's a bit of time to conduct the census, have the meeting, and conduct the vote. The vote would be, the returning officer for the vote would be an employee of the ministry. So they'll be overseeing that. So that's where we're currently at with this.
Mr. Leahy?
Mr. McPherson, I noted in one of the responses to the survey about our capital plan, someone made a comment about people from Dunmore being able to access Catholic education. Do we have students coming in from Dunmore? Is there
Yes.
a bus going out there?
I believe there's two buses. So one bus does the elementary, junior high, and the second bus does high school.
Thank you. So that person just must not understand that there is, that they can take a bus if they live out in Dunmore.
If you look at that map, it shows our jurisdictional boundaries, and it goes quite a ways past Dunmore, encompasses Redcliffe. So it's a fairly substantial boundary we have.
Just as an aside, I was on the Medicine Hat Real Estate Association website the other day. I was trying to relate it to our capital plan, see where houses were being sold, how many in various parts. And on their homepage, they have only Medicine Hat Public listed as a school district. So we may want to contact them and see if we can get our web page on there too. Because I know in the past we've gone to, I won't say great pains, but pains to let people know that in Alberta, it's publicly funded Catholic education. You don't have to pay a tuition. So
If you have the link that you were referring to, if you could send that to me, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on that? All right, photocopier and printer request for proposals.
Thank you. So the fleet of photocopiers and printers have come to the end of their useful life. Some might say it's about 3 years too late. However, they are being replaced. Our IT department is leading this charge. The draft RFP is attached. We haven't made a firm decision on whether we'll lease the equipment or buy it outright, but that will form, that decision will be informed as part of the RFP process.
We leased last time, right?
No, we
No,
purchased
we purchased?
outright, but what we do is we buy the equipment as a division, and then we charge the amortization to each school. So each school's budget pays for the amortization cost, which then goes back into the unrestricted reserve.
Did we ever lease, or is I dreaming?
I believe there was a lease when I first started. It was coming to.
Yeah, I can remember. It was when I was teaching it.
But we've purchased them.
Yeah.
And then the last batch of photocopiers, we purchased them, ran them for seven years. So we get essentially 2 extra years out of those photocopiers. These photocopiers that we have now won't last beyond the 5. So,
I'm gonna put my teacher my hat back on and say, get them. No, take it off.
So obviously there would continue to be a usage charge, which would pay for the toner and other consumables that the photocopiers use. But the funding for this is already built into the budget through the charge that we have for the amortization. However, probably in the March board meeting, we will be coming to the board to look for a transfer of the funds from the restricted reserve to the investment in capital assets, just to actually pay for those. So it is built in within the budget. We just need to get the final costs.
Okay. Any questions on that, photocopiers? All right, continuum of academic supports, Mr. Laird.
A handout of some of the slides that might be
text heavy, so then you can read the paper version. David had asked at the last board meeting a question about what are the academic supports available for students who are struggling? And initially I thought, well, we do this, we do this, we do this. But then I started to think, that simple question is not so simple to answer. It's pretty complex. When you look at not just what are we doing to support kids academically, but what are kids dealing with that justify their struggles academically. So I want to start with a document, and your first copy there you can read through. It talks about a continuum of supports and services. This came up in Alberta Education this year, and it talks about everything. I know I've shown you guys a pyramid before of intervention, but it talks about continuum of supports and service for academics, for mental health, the full gamut. What I'm going to try to do today is just limit it to academic success. But within that, we talk about our universal support, which is basically for academics, that's quality instruction. That's just good teaching, and that's 90% of the support we provide to kids. Then we look at the next stage are different targeted supports, and I've separated them into targeted classroom supports and then targeted school supports that we're going to talk about. And then at the top of our pyramid, we have the individualized supports and services to address specific areas of growth or what are the barriers to their learning. What's important to note though, universal supports are applied through the continuum, and learners receiving targeted or individualized supports also receive the universal support. So I don't want you to think that we put kids in these pyramids where all kids are in the universal stage, and then we add layers of support on top of that. So every kid gets access to the universal classroom instruction, and then we add targeted classroom supports, targeted school supports, and on top of that, individual supports. So we're not putting kids into these triangles. They are layers of support slapped on top. And always, throughout wherever we're adding supports, we always look for external supports as far as what can we include or add to from the community. And you have to look at adding support as a multidisciplinary effort. So we've got speech language pathologists where they can provide strategies to the teachers around comprehension, phonics, etc. We've got occupational therapist support that we can support, like regulation to support learning. And all of this is trying to find what are the barriers, what are the things getting in the way, what are some of the reasons for the potential academic struggles. We have school liaison counselors that can support the mental health side, administrators, learning services staff, low incidence supports, that's PT, vision, deaf and hard of hearing, complex communication, so we may have to use devices for speech to text, text to speech, or to be able to talk if we can. And always looking for outside community supports that we can add in wherever possible.
Hugh, for those ones on the other page, those, we contract all of those, or do we have any of those ourselves?
Speech language, occupational therapists, we contract, we hire school liaison counselors.
Okay.
And then we contract our low incidence supports as well.
Okay.
And when you talk about academic support categories, there's different layers that happen. Interventions, these go on all the time. Teachers do this by assessing their students in a variety of ways, and then they plan for how am I gonna work on this specific skill or this deficit that the student has. So we, in our schools, in all of our schools, we do different things like aids assessments. From the learning loss we've used for the last 2 years, the LENS, the CC3, and a math assessment provided by the government to do the pre and the post survey and then the intervention in between. RAS Kids, lots of schools in elementary use RAS Kids, Success Maker, Mathletics. When we talk about strategies, this is what could possibly work for a student. And Alberta Ed has moved to a strategy-based ISP many years ago. And we worked hard within our strategy-based ISP to work on universal design for learning strategies. So what are those things that students can do, like to reduce the learning gaps? Access to these resources, we use our strategy-based ISP, like I said, our CPC meetings, that's when we get together monthly at every elementary school. We have OT, speech, mental health at the table, and we talk about how we can support the child. Teachers refer them to that table. Learning services staff, collaboration with colleagues, etc. Now, accommodations, usually when you have a strategy that works for a student, we want to move that to a long-term accommodation. Accommodations can be extra time, a reader, a scribe, things like that, that provide to sort of close that gap. Sorry, I'm lost on here. Now, what we found though, when we sit through a CPC and we're talking about what strategies can work for a student, a lot of teachers are saying, well, I do this for the whole class and it benefits everybody. So we noticed over time that a lot of strategies that work for one kid end up working for all, which means that the strength of our bottom pyramid around universal instruction is just getting stronger. It's just good pedagogy, good practice. And lastly, modifications would be if we're modifying the curriculum. So we're still linking into the theme or the topic, but the work is significantly modified. And we do that, we track that through our goal-based ISP, which becomes the report card for that student because they're not working with the general curriculum outcomes. Well, they're linked to them, but not directly. So like I said, these are not, we don't put kids into these different pyramids. These are layers of support on top of universal instruction. So that's all great. Now I want to talk specifically about what are some of the things we're doing. So at the universal level, here's a list of, it's not exhaustive. It's not everything we do because there's so many things that we do. I asked the schools, what do you do at each of these levels to support kids? And this is a lot of the information they provided us. But each school is drastically, not drastically, but different depending on the size of the school, the number of teachers they have, learning assistants, the different supports they can put in. But these things, this is a menu. Like I said, universal class instruction. This is universal design for learning. This is looking at how we can add strategies to support kids. So it's a long list. Like vocabulary supports, reference materials, very instruction, using technology. We just purchased a license for Read Write. That's a program that allows Chromebooks to read text to students or to have students speak into the computer. It allows, from many other things, text to speech, speech to text, etc. Cooperative learning structures, incorporating student choice, scaffolding, and progressive learning tasks, breaking tasks into steps. So like I said, these are all good classroom, universal instruction to support kids that maybe struggle. Next, I want to talk about targeted classroom supports. So these are things that teachers are doing on a more group by group basis. And like I said, this can often depend on the size of your classes, number of teachers available, learning assistants. But many teachers use level reading groups. They use technology to support extra time on assignments, note-taking outlines, personal dictionaries, leveraging speech language pathologists for literacy strategies, leveraging OT support for regulation and different accommodations. Using the strategies that come out of level B testing or level C psychoeducational testing. Visual supports, modifying the amount of reading or the reading level or the complexity of work. So these are more, like I said, targeted to specific kids that they've noticed or groups of kids that they can support within the classroom. Volunteers. Now, as we move to targeted school supports, a lot of the things schools are able to do on a larger level depend on these four things. One, they got to look at the materials they have, the curriculum, access to technology, their assessment materials. They need to look at space, their reading spaces, regulation spaces, flexibility in learning spaces. Do they have a learning commons? So time, And schools get really creative with time. Sometimes we have principals that are taking large numbers of kids, so teachers can work with smaller groups of kids. Sometimes we have administrators doing a gym class, so teachers can do a PLC. So they get really creative with how they use time based on their school schedule. Sometimes they change their class schedules to align and assessment time, and then what people are available to them. Teachers, learning assistants. We always want to look for those natural supports, so family, community members, and what specialists they may have and learning services staff that come to their school. So looking at these materials, space, time, and people, that lends to what they can do on more of a school, targeted school level. These are school-based interventions that they put into place based on what they have. Some of the things we have are flexible timetables, like I talked about. I think St. Pat's had a pilot where they have 3 grades. Luckily, they have 3 grades of 3-grade teachers, grade 3 teachers. And so they can ability group based on those 3 teachers, pockets of kids for intervention. Based on staffing, we have readers and scribes, collaborative meetings to troubleshoot. That's where their PLC time that's made available. Do we have learning commons or quiet areas where kids can work? Access to Chromebooks and technology to support learning. We have hub and pace rooms where kids can go to either get extra time to work or time just to self-regulate and go back to the classroom, depending on what they need. We have a lot of teachers that put in extra support outside the classroom, whether it's flex blocks, recess, before or after school. Technology supported leveled learning, athletics, reading A to Z, accelerated reader, etc. Benchmarking assessments to target where to focus, like I mentioned the ones before, the LENS, the CC3, numeracy, I think that's a CCE, but it's close. Learning services staff and therapists and specialists to provide notes and strategies. Our strategy-based ISP. Efficient use of learning assistants. So an example is when a class has an option style class or a learning assistance not needed to support other students, they can go, like let's say we have a student that generally has a learning assistant with them, but doesn't need them for phys ed. Now this learning assistant can be freed up to work with another set of students, right? Pooling our resources, common resources across grades. I know we purchased a lot of Haggerty phonetical awareness resources recently. And efficient use of technology. And curriculum aligned learning progressions. We're working on that right now to break down the curriculum into the outcomes that each outcome has progressions. So, it relates to an outcome-based report card. You can break down the outcome into easy tasks, a little bit harder tasks, or a higher level of executive functioning, and then like a level 4 where they're really mastering the outcome. So based on that one outcome, you could put a student at a 2 or 3 or a 4. That relates to our outcome-based report card. So if you break the outcome down into tasks or skills and progressions, like they call them, you can level where the kids are at with that outcome. And lastly, our individualized supports. To note, we try to do grade level curriculum. We try to find access points within the curriculum where students can participate in the curriculum. So this would be our more students that are on a modified program. So they would have individual supports like that. We have lots of regular team meetings. There's lots more people involved, usually with PT, deaf and hard of hearing, SLP, OT. We have a teacher for the visually impaired. We do have a blind student in our division. Alternate learning plans, or alternate options. We have students that go online. We have students that attend programs like St. Joe's. Assisted technology, iPads used for communication. Specialized equipment, seating, regulation tools, different support, training. So it's not a matter of learning Braille, but you got to teach people to teach Braille, and then students have to learn it. That's a definite challenge. Yeah. like I said, this is where anything we have on a modified program, that's our goal-based ISP. So that's a lot. Questions?
Nope, thank you very much.
There was this bomb out.
It wasn't a bomb, it was just, I was curious.
It's a big topic. There's a lot. Like I said, when you look at what teachers do every day in the classroom, that's massive alone. That's
Well, you know, the context was, you know, the Alberta government that identifies as our superintendent's the last meeting. Unfortunately, a cultural group that measures them and how they're doing. And so I was asking, what are we doing for them? And then taking his point, which was a good one, about why are we identifying this cultural group? So I extended the request into what are we doing for all students who are.
and they would
suffering.
fall into these levels of supports regardless of their.
Yeah, so it wasn't a bomb, it was,
Well, it wasn't a bomb initially. When I started diving into it, it became a lot bigger.
well, you know, it's good to know, and it's good affirmation. And it's, sometimes the extra becomes the expected. Okay? There's a lot of extra here. And so it's kind of a reality check in terms of, you know, what are we doing and how responsive are we to students who are struggling? And are we going to get everybody? No, but there are a lot of strategies, interventions, programs, and also obviously interest in helping those kids.
The filter is pretty tight. If you shake it, we're hoping not a lot of kids fall through, but it happens, but it's tough to lose them.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, communications report, Tim.
My report's attached. It's a short one, but it's definitely been a little busy, but it's good. So I can answer any questions if anyone has any.
Robert?
I always enjoy looking at your report. I do have a question and maybe a request for future reports. Do you track the amount of views we get on our media?
I haven't looked quite, but I know we have access to analytics, especially on our website. There's a thing called Google Analytics that we can use too.
Yeah.
But I haven't, but I definitely can.
Yeah, I would like to see if we could in the future, every report have the amount of hits that we're getting, how many views we're getting, so that we can kind of measure how, like, you know, we're looking at it, but what's the public looking at? You know, what's the response? And we can make, just to measure, okay? Yeah, if we could do that on a regular basis.
Yeah, I can definitely, like, I don't look deep.
Yeah.
Or like, I can see, say if I post something like our videos, like our epic videos, I
Yeah,
can see how often they're shared or viewed.
yeah,
But I know there's a lot deeper where it's like, someone might click on it and look at it for 3 seconds, like, stuff like that's quite monitor too, so there's definitely a deep beyond of them.
yeah. I'm not sure how deep we need to go, but just to get an overall sense of, you know, what's happening.
Any other questions? Good job, as always. Thank you. Action and discussion items. St. Mary's Band restricted reserved use request. A lot of R's in there.
There are. Being Scottish, I like to roll.
Oh, you can roll. I can't, I'm Irish. We only drink beer.
So St. Mary's School has requested to use $17,000 of the $41,000 they have in their band restricted reserve. The purpose is to replace certain aging instruments. The restricted reserve has been accumulated using the band rental fees over the past several years. And so they're just wanting to modernize some of their pieces of equipment. So the recommended motion I have for the board is be it resolved that the Board of Trustees for the Medicine Hat Catholic Board of Education authorize the use of $17,000 from the band restricted reserve for St. Mary's Band program in 2022-23.
David, you have your hand up for that?
I'd like to make that motion.
Okay, David, make the motion. Any discussion? All in favor?
Excellent, thank you.
And the next one is modular classroom.
Yes, so the 22-23 modular classroom program, or MCP, is an annual request that we put into the ministry. There was some interesting information that the ministry provided this year. Very specifically, their limited ability to address pressures through the procurement of new units. So they're asking us to consider possible relocation of underutilized units between schools. So, which fits in well with what we're actually asking for. We have enrollment pressure at St. John Paul II, and we have determined that 2 modulars are required for the upcoming school year. When we looked at our inventory of modulars throughout the division, we've determined there are 2 modulars at St. Michael's School, which can be removed from the school and moved to École St. John Paul II. That would have the benefit for us to increase the area capacity utilization, or ACU, at St. Mary's, and obviously reduce the ACU at St. John Paul II. One dynamic that we do have is at JP2, we are now exceeding the design limit for that school. So in order to put the 2 modulars there, additional washroom space is required. So we will be asking for a wet modular, a washroom modular, similar to what we put in at Notre Dame Academy two years ago. In terms of where we would put it, we have two options. The first is the expansion to the west and northwest, and we have a map of the footprint of the school. If we head in that direction, which makes the most logical sense, we are going to breach our property boundary. So I'm in the process of setting up a meeting with the City of Medicine Hat, as well as the Public School Board, to discuss potential redistribution of the school reserve land. Failing coming to an agreement with both of those parties, what we would look at is the second option, which is to extend west with those 3 modulars, and then from the center of the modular wing go north. The downside to option 2 is we potentially would have to talk to the city about removing the outdoor skating rink there. So there's 2 options, both are valid, but we'll have to see what our discussions come up with. So the motion that we are recommending that the board approve is that the Board of Trustees for the Medicine Hat Catholic Board of Education request Alberta Education under the 22-23-24 modular classroom program relocate 2 modular classrooms from St. Michael's School to École St. John Paul II School, and further requests the addition of 1 washroom modular at École St. John Paul II School.
Chair, I have a question.
Yeah.
To go or be forced to go into option 2, are there additional costs?
For option 2,
Yeah.
for us, I don't believe there would be any additional cost. There would be the removal of the outdoor skating rink would be the responsibility of the City of Medicine Hat, so that would be our cost. There would be an unfortunate effect on the local community though, because that rink does get get used.
And Chair, if I may, just for clarity, for myself, when would we be looking at moving those?
So the request is going in this week, and I believe we would be notified of approvals early 2023. So January, February. Once the ground thaws, we'll be putting the pilings in, assuming we get approved, and then at an appropriate time, we would do those modulars from the same. So it would be done before September 1 of 2023.
Okay.
Sorry, that's a long answer to.
No, well, that's what I was asking for.
So this is 1 and 2 here, right?
Yes, the left is option 1, and you can see the, well, all of those modulars reach the property.
Yeah.
But we do feel we can have a discussion with the city and the public school board. The amount of land that we would need for that is low.
Yeah.
The portion that we would be looking for is on the corner of the property. So if a high school is built on that site, that is probably the one piece of land that is.
So is this public school land that's over here?
It's designated for public school land. So it's technically held by the city until such time as the public school board builds a school.
Would ask for it. What about the buses there? That is a nightmare, that school, in what pick up and drop off is crazy. Because I have a grandson who goes there, and he's sometimes almost putting his life in his hands to get out of that vehicle. Is there any land there that we could change some of that?
In terms of putting
like a bus lane or something like that in there?
There's
I mean, that has nothing to do with.
on
what
a
we're
street,
asking here, but-
looking at it, probably not a lot of options. It's
Because this side is buses and this side is all driveways.
Yes.
And it's a nightmare.
It's one of the downsides of that site. It's one of the issues that we have and are working with this city on is when land is designated for school reserve land. Do we want to have a shared piece of property with the public? But the second thing is we need to have two frontages. So kind of a
Absolutely,
front and
yeah.
side, which will help address these areas. When you look at schools like St. Mary's, St. Patrick's, St. John Paul II, even Mother Teresa, there's issues with that. Now, some of it is also cultural, where everyone drives now, and a lot of these schools were built, students walk, and so we're seeing pressures because of that, but there are no easy
fixes.
no easy fixes.
Okay, let's get back to this, what we're supposed to be doing. Sorry.
Chair, if I can ask again, just because it was brought up, it was mentioned the possibility of a future high school. I didn't quite catch where it would be located. Would it be located in that piece where I assume that's a ball diamond?
No, so it would be completely to the west of that property line. I don't have the.
So it doesn't show the area there on this map.
So to be clear, the public board designated land is over here.
No, I understand where I thought you suggested it was a Catholic high school.
No.
Oh,
No,
I
sorry,
misunderstood.
if I did, that was my mistake.
Wow.
It's designated for.
hopeful thinking, wishful thinking on my part to say that, okay, no, I understand that's public land there. I was thinking so then we have to go this direction, it was our school.
Okay, so Robert, are you
I have some questions.
okay?
So I got several. So I understand the provincial government's trying to save money. Can we request new modules rather than move old ones? What would be the impact of moving the modules from St. Michael's? And we have a capital plan where we may be merging 2 schools temporarily. How would that, moving these modules, would that be in our best interest in the long term for that capital plan?
Those are great questions. With regards to the saving money, I think it's more than just saving money. It's also capacity issues. There's a huge need for modulars, and with the supply chain issues we're seeing, even the modulars we received last year for Notre Dame Academy, they had to make executive decisions about sending modulars out to get installed, and then they would finish building them on site.
Okay.
Because there was issues getting windows, furnaces, those types of things. So I think the government is recognizing there are limitations both financially but also supply chain aspects. So yes, we could ask for new, but one advantage that we have with this is an attempt to help, for a lack of a better word, right size the building. The ACU at St. Michael's right now is at 50%, so it's 50% full.
Yeah.
With this move of those modulars, we would increase that to 59%. So from a government perspective, this is a better utilization of how our schools are.
So that's not a big impact at all.
It's not, but it does help with our funding. Right now, we are clawed back for utilization under 85%. So the amount of the clawback would be minimized.
Okay.
And then there's a couple other strategies about where preschool files are housed. So that's one of the things we're looking at to help better manage our utilization. In terms of the impact from St. Mike's, Mr. Hellman has had a discussion with Ms. English, and obviously no school wants to lose space, but the school, based on the information we've received, can continue operations with those 2 modulars removed. From a capital plan impact, the long term, if we go with the consolidation model, those modulars wouldn't be needed at that school, because St. Michael's students, like in accordance with the consolidation plan, would be housed at the new school. So within the existing capital plan, this is congruent with.
What I meant was the transition. Like if our capital plan is approved, there will be a transition period where you're merging 2 schools together. Would St. Michael's be able to handle the St. Francis population without the modules?
So a lot of this comes down to how we phase this out. One of the options, and Mr. Leahy talked a little bit about this within the committee of the whole, where the gyms might be, what I'm saying is the footprint of the new school might not be exactly over top of the existing St. Francis School. It could be on a different portion of that land. A lot of this comes down to design and phasing in terms of
I understand
how that rolls
out. I was under the assumption that we'd be demolishing that school.
It's that the school at some point would, according to the existing plan, would be demolished, but we wouldn't need to necessarily house those students at St. Michael's during
thank you.
Construction.
David?
Looking at these numbers, I think what I'm hearing Deacon Robert talk about is, if right now St. Michael's has room for, on paper, 163 students, St. Francis has 128 students. factor in the 9% increase in utilization, so the available room would go down, I don't know how many, but not enough that on paper, I'll say again, that the 128, even though those aren't the live numbers we talk about if and when it happened, would still fit.
In theory, so each modular accounts for about 25 places. So the reduction of 2 would reduce St. Michael's from 163 available spaces down to 113. So
You would be close.
yeah, and if needed, we would move potentially one of the modulars from St. Francis to St. Michael's.
Plus, you could use some off-site things, although I'm not going to grow stuff, but you could run the kindergarten program, for instance, off-site in another building somewhere.
There's a variety of different options, but the question is valid in terms of how it relates to.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the big picture, right?
Okay, Dick, did you have any questions?
Yeah, I had the same question that the Deacon Robert asked about moving the modulars from St. Francis, from St. Michael's, when we are going to be needing the additional space, and we talked about that. I think I'm satisfied that will work. The other thing I wanted to raise is following our meeting yesterday with Neil at Notre Dame. He was talking about expecting a fairly large influx of students next year from St. Pat's. And I asked him if he had made a request yet for modulars, and he said not yet. So I expect that sometime in the not too distant future, we're going to be seeing a request from those people for additional space as well. How does that fit into this question?
So that isn't accounted for, but when we look at Notre Dame Academy, their utilization right now is 81%. On paper, they have room for 100 students. The challenge obviously is class sizes and how you're configuring that.
Well, he was talking roughly 80 students, plus
So-
or minus.
So on paper, they do have that room. One of the challenges we have seen with Notre Dame Academy is expectation versus actual alignment. The schools do a good job estimating, but the actual students in the scene aren't always there. I think this year Notre Dame Academy was short. Was it 20? So they had 20 students fewer than what they had anticipated. They're still up, but not as much as they were advising.
My question is, previously, before we amended our capital project and expanded it, we were looking at right sizing at St. Mary's. And I thought at that time we were talking about removing the portables from that school. Is that correct?
I don't remember.
So the capital plan was a right sizing of St. Mary's. It was a fairly substantial project. So the modulars or some of the classroom space would have been removed as part of that capital plan. Yes.
And those on the east side of the school, closest to the board office here, is that 2 modules?
I'm not sure how there are.
There's 4 classrooms.
So four, yeah.
Or more.
But those aren't modulars like we think of them. They're kind of
Fairly permanent.
built in place. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just looking at are there other options than St. Michael's?
Um,
Would that be viable? And so you're suggesting that because those ones are a little more solidly constructed, it would be much more difficult to attempt to move them.
at St.
Yes.
Mary's. I don't think those were meant to be moved, nor are they of the same configuration of the modulars that we have at St. John Paul II, whereas the two modulars that were moved from St. Michael's are fairly new, like within the last 10 years, that are of the same configuration at St. John Paul II. So it would give the seamless look to.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions on that? If not, can I have somebody move that?
David moved it.
David moved it? Did you? Okay, David moved it. All in favor?
Oh, you moved the last one, David.
Yeah. He moved this one too. Committee reports, ATA, Mr. Mestel.
Thank you, Chair. I want to thank the board and our negotiator, Janet Money, for the meeting we had recently. I think it was a fruitful meeting. The initial meeting between us and the ATA is scheduled for the 21st of December. It's a little up in the air. As you know, Janet had some surgery, as was evidenced in the video conference that she attended. I thought that, in my mind, her surgery was going to be very minor. It turned out not to be so. She sent an email that Greg has forwarded to me, and it involved quite a long surgery and a reconstructive surgery. She's been told by her medical people that she wouldn't be available to meet face to face with us till about the second week in January. We are hoping that our request to the ATA to meet here at the board office for the initial meeting be accepted rather than at the lodge, for the reason that we are confident in our ability to video link Janet here, and whereas we're not quite as confident about that capacity at the lodge. We haven't heard back yet from the ATA whether they will accept that or not. We hope that they will, for the reasons that our negotiator is recovering from surgery. So I hope we hear from those folks soon, because that meeting is scheduled for, is it 21st? Already next week. 21st, yes. It's an indication of how close we are to Christmas. If we don't meet on the 21st, then the earliest that we would be able to meet with Janet face to face, I think from the email she said January the 9th. However, that's dependent on how quickly she recovers and at the advice of her medical team. Did I leave anything out?
Any questions? Thank you, Dick. Deacon Robert, QP.
Nothing to report.
Okay. Mr. Kent, Teacher Board Advisory.
Minutes of our November meeting are attached. Just as a general comment, I know the teachers that I've talked to say they appreciate the open and frank discussion, and it's good to have a list of items. And they're generally satisfied and happy with the results, and if there's questions that need to be responded to later, that they get attended to.
Good. Deacon Robert, support staff.
So we didn't have a support staff meeting, but we had the subcommittee meeting. Support staff board advisory subcommittee. And so we met on November 22nd, and the details of that meeting will be discussed in our committee of the whole.
All right, QP support staff, Mr. Leahy.
And nothing to report.
Student Board Advisory Committee, me, nothing to report. Audit Committee. Do we have anything to report? Just that we passed the audit, right?
We passed the audit, and the audit committee will be meeting in early January.
Division Consolidating Planning Committee, Dr. Zurichny.
We will be meeting early next week.
I
Okay,
have a question.
oh, sorry.
What's the composition of the committee? Who's on it?
On the committee,
Yeah,
there's myself, Trustee Leahy, I think Trustee Kinch wants to come to that meeting as well.
if I can be invited, sure.
And
Karen,
Karen,
Jen,
And
Gordon,
Helen, right?
and Helen, and Greg.
Am I on it?
And I think you were on that initial one.
You're on all the committees.
Yeah, I did have you listed. But,
It's not polite to make faces when you're the board chair.
You're on that committee.
yeah, that's what I had written down. So,
Okay.
unless I'm-
Okay, thank
All
you.
right. I kind of thought I was, but if I wasn't, that was okay too. Okay, so next week. Oof, next week's gonna be busy. ASBA, Mr. Mestel, Zone 6.
Thank you, Zone 6. Our last meeting was on November the 16th. Couple of the meeting highlights for the election of officers. Brad Toon, who is a trustee with Westwind, has turned out as being our Zone 6 director. The new director is Lori Hodges, interestingly enough, also from Westwind. It's a very active board. We had a speaker, Nathan Freed, who is to replace, who has replaced Ron Taylor as the field services rep. Ron has retired. There's some new funding for, he announced new funding for distance learners. And there's also funding now for students from outside of the province. And the details are in the funding manual. He talked about the AERR reports. At the time, they were still embargoed. I don't believe they are anymore. I think that came off on the 30th of November.
I'm not sure actually.
It was just like the end of last week.
Just
Just the end of last week, yeah.
Anyway, they were embargoed at the time. There's a new task force that's been established for Ukrainian students. These students aren't refugees. They're temporary residents, and the money has been allocated to them. We had a second speaker in the person of Dr. Trish Satropa, who is working for the Alberta Professional Development Consortium. And her function is to help teachers with the implementation of curriculum. And she gave a fairly detailed presentation, which would be mainly designed for teachers, and I guess that's who she works with, on how to implement and how to navigate around the new curriculum, and as it appears. So it was an interesting presentation, but it would be extremely helpful for those people who are actively in the classroom, and less so for us trustees. Our next meeting is tomorrow in Lethbridge at the Lethbridge Public Board Office.
Okay, thank you. ACSTA. I was on a Zoom call this morning with the ACSTA, I'm on the faith formation group, and it was the chair of that is Dean Cernicki, and they were talking about SPICE and blueprints, and do we want to continue that? They're going to have a survey come out to all trustees and I don't know, I think Cass is going to do the superintendent one, just to see how valuable people think it is and that kind of stuff. And then they're talking about having a symposium next year. Like 2023. And it isn't really nailed down yet, but that's what all that came out of that meeting. Took forever, but then Dean likes to talk, so. Yeah. And Mr. Kinch, Foundation? Education Foundation?
Yes, last minute we were reviewing some financials and everything looks really good. Of course, the economy, what it is, causes things to fluctuate a little bit, but still things look good. And additionally, preparations are starting to begin for the Foundation Golf Tournament.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Okay, Parent Association. Oh, sorry.
may I ask, and Mr. Kitch, you may not know this off the top of your head, perhaps Mr. McPherson, but how much money does the foundation have?
I would defer to Mr. McPherson.
They, in terms of unrestricted funds, they have about 200,000.
And restricted?
I don't have that off the top of my head, but there's 550, 600,000. But the restricted funds have conditions attached to it.
Right. Is there financial statement, is it somewhere on the division website?
It is the annual general meeting is in January, and it'll be for the 21-22 year will be released at that point.
And it'll be on the website, or?
It should be.
I guess what I'm saying is I'd
I
like
know
to.
the Education Foundation has its own website that,
Okay.
that Mackenzie would, I can.
So it will be
talk her
located on
probably on the
foundation's website.
foundation
Yeah.
website, which is like, it can be found, the link to the foundation website can be found on our website.
Okay. Thank you.
Further to your question, David, regarding the amount of money, the largest portion of that restricted reserve came from the Knights of Columbus down at St. Pat's. And I believe that amount was $400,000. $400,000. And that has some restrictions to it. So that's the bulk of the restricted reserve.
That was the sale of the Columbia Hall, right?
From the sale of Columbia Hall, yes.
Okay, any more? All right, Parent Association, we met, it was quite a short meeting, and I don't have the minutes from it yet, and when I do, I'll post them. And teacher, TIBA, Mr. Mescal.
There was a TIBA meeting, which was the annual meeting that followed the ASBA meeting. That would be last week in November. The only thing that happened there was that there was an election of officers, and I do have those. The new officers are comprised of Norma Lang from Rocky View, Terry Harris from Edmonton Catholic, Nancy Cole from Calgary Public, Shannon Cook from Calgary Public, Trina Boymuk from Elk Island, and Tammy Hinkle from High Prairie. And I believe, I don't see it on my notes here, but I believe also that Linda Wellman is on there as well, also from Calgary Catholic.
Okay,
So that was the only business that was conducted at that meeting, was the election of officers.
thank you. All right, we're at closing prayer, Mr. Mescal.
So that's part of my agenda. Please join me in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Hearing of your ministry, Lord, we thank you for being with us during this meeting and for having guided our thoughts, words, and actions. Stay with us now as we leave this meeting and return to our respective lives. Help us to keep you as you are now in our thoughts, words, and actions. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. The Father, the Son, and the Spirit.
Okay, we need to finish the committee of the whole. I'm going to take Grace off the table, just because I want her. 2 minutes? Yep, we can have a 2-minute break.
I don't know. Talk to you in the neighborhood.